Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range with the new Sig P365 and 380. You heard me right, 380, not 9mm. It has some distinct differences from its 9mm counterpart, and we will do a little bit of a comparison today between it and the 9mm. But before we get started with today's video, guys, we're going to do things a little bit differently, and I hope you enjoy this different format that we're going to use in this video. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, a great way to do that is to become part of our Patreon family. There is a link in the video description below. You'll get early access to videos like this one. You'll also have direct access to me. I answer all private communications, and there's other perks as well. So with that being said, let's get started with today's video, checking out this new 380 P365. All right, guys, so this is our new studio. We're going to try something a little bit different for today's video, talking about the P365 and 380. Jason has joined me. Jason is the cameraman here on Mac, and he's actually stepping out from behind the camera into the front of the camera for the purposes of this conversation, because Jason and I spent pretty much an entire afternoon shooting this handgun to get a feel for it. The handgun, of course, that we're talking about is the new Sig P380. It's not a P380, that's actually a Kel-Tec product. It's a 380, and it's called the P365 380. And outwardly, it looks very similar to the existing P365. So in my right hand that I'm moving right now, this is a P365, and this is the new 380 version of the handgun. There are some notable differences, but overall, the gun is pretty much outwardly and in handling almost identical to the P365 9mm. So over the years, you guys have seen me use a lot of primary arms optics, everything from red dot sights to magnified optics. And why do I do that? Well, over the years, they've offered very good products for a very fair price. They have fast shipping, outstanding customer support, and that's why you've seen me using those products for so many years. If you guys would like to pick up a magnified optic like you see on this Daniel Defense Mark 12, you can pick up an optic like this one. Just put it in your cart over at pa.com or primaryarms.com, and if you use the code MAC at checkout, MAC at checkout, you'll get a free scope mount with your optic, and that goes for any Primary Arms branded optic. If you pick up an optic that has an integrated mount, use that code MAC at checkout, and you'll get a free Kill Flash ARD for that optic. So please swing by and check out primaryarms.com. When we first got this thing out of the box, we just started doing this thing, right? So with YouTube Shorts, we are able to post 15-second videos. So lately, the last few times to the range, we've been posting these little videos. And one thing that we've done is like the first magazine out of a new gun, right? We just shoot a real quick clip of it. Right. And so we put the first magazine of 95 grain Federal ball into the little gun, and it hiccuped on the 5th round.
Yep. And as per traditional Mac fashion for you anyway.
So we went ahead and posted that to YouTube, and of course we got those comments like, he broke it already, and this is typical Mac fashion. But there is a silver lining here. So we fired a second magazine, and the gun once again bobbled and had a little bit of a stumble at that 5th round again. Yep. And I was thinking, oh, here we go again, right? Never buy first generation anything Sig type of thing, right?
Right.
And so we loaded up another magazine, and at this point, we're recording it now with non-YouTube. It's because with YouTube, with the 15-second shorts, it doesn't save a copy to your phone. It just uploads it, and then the original file's gone. So we started filming with regular cameras. And what was the first thing that we noticed? The gun. So it started working, but it was still having a little bit of a problem there at the beginning.
Right. So as like anything else that goes on, the moment a camera turns on, things definitely start to work. But one of the big hiccups that it did have was the slide wasn't necessarily locking open or staying locked open all the time. So the stovepipes, if you will, kind of stopped, and then the slide would just not lock open, but then it would feed an entire magazine.
Didn't lock open. But we also noticed that the ejection was very weak and erratic.
Yes.
Like the spent cases were just barely falling out of the ejection port.
Yep.
Almost to the point in one shot we could see the case look like it bounced off the top of the hood of the slide and barrel, and like it could have fallen back in, but it still made its way out.
Oh yeah, I had a few go what seemed like forward or fall right back into my actual shooting hand. So,
but it somehow miraculously made it out.
Right.
But as time went on, I would say 2 boxes in, the gun really started to perform properly?
Yeah. No, it was probably about 150 rounds or so before it actually started to perform properly. We were really putting a lot of mags through it to get it to go. But things did start to get better. And so we were happy to see that.
Yeah, right. Because I was really thinking, oh man, here we go again, first generation problems. But now, you know me, I'm not a big fan of break-in periods. I think that break-in periods really are intended to correct any shoddy manufacturing that might have happened. A burr that's in the wrong spot needs to be worn down by cycling the gun's action, things like that. So a gun is a very simple machine, generally less than 50 parts in them, and they're not all that complicated. So it's not unrealistic to expect them to work right out of the box. So I don't typically believe in break-in periods, but I was really happy to see this little guy start to work, because now after about that 150 round mark, it was chucking those empty cases just like it should. We also noticed that the recoil, now my perception of the recoil was it was substantially less than the 9mm P365 we had at the range with us as well. What did you feel?
So I was the same in terms of that. So we were talking about when we were pulling the slide manually on it, they felt very similar, very subtle difference in terms of like the recoil spring. Like you could feel like it was slightly easier, but not too far behind the 9mm.
Yeah.
So that recoil impulse was extremely muted in the 380 versus the 9mm. Like there was definitely a lot more punch with the 9mm. Still not painful by any means,
right.
but
very disruptive to the sights, right? So the 380, it's almost like the gun didn't move at all.
Right. You could just sit there on target and just rip rounds with this thing as fast as possible. And that I found to be pretty cool.
Right. And I think that's probably one of the benefits. So we had people ask on the short video, if somebody has limited dexterity and mobility in their hands, will this new 380 be easier for them to cycle the slide on? And my answer is no. If you put a blindfold on and cycle the 380 and then cycle the 9mm, you're going to detect an ever so slight difference, but it's not like night and day difference. So I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference for somebody with limited dexterity or mobility. The weight of the guns is something that you can definitely feel. Yeah. So if I handed you blindfolded the 9mm and then handed you the 380 and you had them one in each hand, you would definitely be able to go, oh yeah, the 380 is lighter.
Oh yeah.
Putting them on the postal scale, the P365 and 9mm was 1 pound, I think 1 ounce. The 380 was like right at 15 ounces, so just shy of a pound. And then we also threw the Ruger LCP on the scale, and this little guy only weighs 10 ounces. Now this is empty with no magazine in the gun, no rounds in the weapon. So this is definitely the lightweight gun, but it's also considerably smaller and handier. But we'll talk more about how that compares to the P365 here in a minute. So the features of the P365, I think a lot of folks are already familiar with the layout of the gun, how it works. It's a striker-fired handgun, the controls, what they're like.
Right.
Let's believe this is a 380. So you can tell the 380 from the 9mm by looking at it, because looking downward on the gun, at least at this point in the P365's evolution, because they may make this change to the 9mm as well.
Correct.
But the optics plate on this little guy is on top and has screws that go down from the top. On previous versions, and it leaves the rear sight in place when you take the plate off. On previous versions, the screws went in from the underside, and the whole plate would come off and take the rear sights with it. I know that's the case with the 320. Is that the case with the P365 too?
Yeah, because those screws on the bottom side are sometimes really hard to get out. I know there's a lot of folks, and I've had a few come into the shop that have actually stripped them, trying to get them out of there. So having them on top and a little bit more easy to access, I think, is definitely better.
It definitely is. And that's one way you can currently tell the 380 from the 9mm, but I suspect Sig understands that this is a superior method for mounting that plate, so it might be the case going forward. And it does. Here, just as a reference, guys, this is my Carry P365 XL. That's actually what I have on me today. The weapon is empty. There's no magazine in it. All the weapons have been checked multiple times before we started filming today. But you can see that I have the 507K on here, and the rear sight is missing. This is an earlier version of the P365 XL that has those screws going up through the underside of the slide. So when you do take it off, it does take, at least in the current generation of P365, take that rear sight off. So go ahead and explain. Everybody's used to hearing me talk about new guns. Let's let you talk about new guns. What are some of the features of the P365 380? I mean, aside from the fact it looks and functions just like the 9mm.
Right. So my biggest thing, and I've always said this before, is I've always wanted to get a gun that was in 380 that had a larger frame to it, because most of the 380s on the market have just these small, little narrow frames to them, where that recoil just goes right into your hand. It's very sharp, abrupt, and they're just not that nice to shoot. I mean, one of my favorites at the time to shoot was the new M&P EZ in 380, the Shield EZ in 380. But I hate that grip safety that's on there. With this thing coming out, I was instantly excited because I like to shoot guns. It's not for defensive reasons, but I like to go to the range and shoot guns and punch paper with guns that have nice soft recoil that, I can take with my kids out, and they're not, trying to yank the trigger to try to get the recoil done and over with. But this thing was actually that nice to shoot. The features are the same to the other 365s that we've ever shot over the years, meaning that, controls are all in the same spots, reversible in the same reversible way they've always been. The only difference being, like you said, is this mounting plate here is the only way I can tell them apart right now.
Yep, and another nice feature for this gun, so if you already have a P365, you want to pick up the 380 version of it, it uses the same holsters.
Yep.
Because dimensionally, this thing is identical to its 9mm big brother. And so it feels just like the 9mm big brother, has the same trigger pull as the 9mm big brother, it has the same modular trigger system as its big brother. Everything is the same, it's just different. As a matter of fact, the magazines are the same as well. If I take the 9mm magazine, this is the 9mm magazine, this is the 380 magazine. If I take the 9mm magazine, it will lock into the 380. We also did a test. We thought, well, what the heck? Let's put some 380 rounds in the 9mm magazine and use the 9mm magazine in the 380 P365, and it worked.
Yep.
It worked. And so that inspired us to do one more thing, and that was to build a Franken gun.
Yep.
Right? So this was actually Jason's idea, and I'll go ahead and do that for you guys here real quick. So we took the slide and barrel off of the 380. We took my carry gun, which I had with me at the time. We took the slide off of it. So this is a P365 XL frame. It has the full-size grip frame, and this one has some Talon grips on it and a Streamlight light on it. But I can take the 380 slide and barrel assembly and slide that right on there. And now we have a larger grip frame.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, my magazine's loaded, so I don't have it on the table. Taking the P365 XL's longer magazine, its ability to hold 15 rounds, and it works with the 380 rounds. We loaded it with 15 rounds of 380, and the gun cycled flawlessly. We even shook the magazine up, so because remember the 380 is a little bit shorter in overall length, so when you're looking down into the magazine, you can see a big gap in front of the round. You might think that the round would nosedive when it tried to feed, but that wasn't the case. Jason shook the magazine. You could look down in there, see the rounds were all staggered in different places in the magazine, and the gun cycled flawlessly every time. Now, we're not recommending you do this running 380 rounds out of a 9mm magazine, but it does work.
Yeah, it did.
And we did it for at least 100 plus rounds because we were having so much fun with it.
Yep.
The difference between, and we'll have to show you a picture of this, the difference between the 9mm magazine and the 380 magazine, it's literally the same body, but all they've done is they've put a little spacer in the backside of the 380 to accommodate that shorter round, so it sets further forward in the magazine.
Yep.
Everything else is identical to its 9mm counterpart. So in terms of shooting the gun, tell people what you thought of the trigger pull, how quickly you could get the gun back on target, and we were shooting some steel plates, which was kind of funny because the steel plates sometimes wouldn't fall from a 380 round.
Right.
But I'm just going to swap this out if you want to tell the folks a little bit more about how the gun shoots and how much you like it there. So
that was a little endeavor that we did to kind of build the perfect 380 in our mind, the XL frame with the 380 slide on it.
That is the perfect 380.
It actually turned out really well, but the funny part was on our plate rack there's some plates that actually don't fall down. They're kind of more leaned forward on there for heavier hitting rounds. And the 380, Tim was able to like double tap one of the plates before it even fell, and that was actually kind of funny watching you do that. It was like, oh yeah, you don't want to go down, bing, bing, bing.
That's how fast you can shoot this thing,
yeah.
though, right? So literally, you can hold this thing and just like ping, 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 and at 7 yards,
Right there.
just right there, because it's like shooting a 22 almost.
You can chew the center out of a target with that thing. That's what was so fun about this gun, is it was so that fun to shoot because it was that soft recoil. The follow-up shots were quick. The trigger reset, the trigger pull, all of that, with training, really simple to do with it.
So we both carry the Ruger LCP Max. These are our pocket carry guns. I know this is your daily carry gun. I typically have a much bigger handgun on, but when I'm going out and just have shorts on or something, I'll grab mine. But my typical carry gun lately has been the P365 XL. But this little gun is smaller, lighter than the 380 version of the P365. We tried putting this into a pocket. Now this one fits in a pocket comfortably. It's light enough. It's several ounces lighter than the 365 380, but it fits comfortably in the pocket. You really do forget you have it. Even when it's fully loaded, it doesn't poke you. It doesn't, if you have deep pockets. Now, if you wear skinny jeans, you're not going to have much luck with any of these firearms in a pocket, but this one definitely is more pocketable. We did try to shoot this one from the pocket. We used an inside the pocket holster. Always use a holster if you're going to carry a gun in a pocket that covers the trigger guard. But it was just almost too big. And I have, my waistband is 34 inches. I always run fairly deep pockets. But I noticed with my LCP Max, I can easily stick my hand down inside my pocket, grab it, and pull it out. This takes up more space. I found myself wanting to pinch the gun and pull it out versus trying to get my hand in there with it to yank it out. Ultimately, the gun came out of my pocket with the holster attached. I stripped the holster away and started shooting. But I'm big enough, my pants are large enough, I could kind of get away with pocket carry. What are your opinions on pocket carrying something like this?
So it can be done. It is definitely more clumsy in terms of pocket carry compared to that little LCP Max. But as I've discussed before, normally when I talk or feel uncomfortable around certain folks, my hands are already kind of waiting in the pockets in case something does happen. But with that gun, I have to say it can be done. Not ideal though. I would still probably get a holster for it.
So how would you rate it to the LCP Max? Would you say that? I think it's going after two different markets. I really do. I think the LCP Max would be my pick of the two for a pocket carry gun.
Absolutely.
But if I wanted to do appendix, if I wanted to do strong side, especially inside the waistband, but even strong side carry or something like that, the P365 380 is going to be better served in that role. I don't really see it being much of a pocket pistol. It's just a little bit too large. But I also want to talk about the 380 in terms of lethality, because people are going to say, well, if it's available in 9mm, why in the world would you want it in 380? Now, we've done some testing with some modern 380 rounds. Lehigh Defense makes their Extreme Defender. We also carry the Federal Punch 380 ammunition, which is a new offering, I believe, from Federal. We've tested in ballistics gel in a previous video, and it meets all the FBI standards for penetration in terms of lethality, for whether or not a gun is determined to be a worthy carry gun or not. It definitely meets those requirements.
Yeah.
So with all that in mind, would you even consider carrying the 380 over a 9mm, or would you just go with the 9mm? Keeping in mind that this thing recoils much less, it holds the same number of rounds. What do you think? Would you consider carrying this thing?
I would. And here's a few things to consider, at least some thoughts that I've had about it. And I was thinking about this just today. This particular pistol, there's tons of people out there. Why would you make a 380? It's already a 9mm. There's no point. Well, not everybody is the same, right? So there's obviously people that might take their kids shooting. There's also people with disabilities. There's, older folks, men and women that have different levels of shooting. And some folks, when they pull the trigger on some of the guns, they've got their eyes closed. They're just waiting for this horrible blast, and they're not managing recoil. Managing recoil on a 9mm is a little bit hard for them. If you can put something like this in their hands, and there's very little recoil associated, a little less blast, to it, they could probably do much better with it. And I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see the fact that there is a pistol out there, a new one that has far less recoil and is more controllable to arm more people.
So I'm with you. I will always opt for 9mm, right? That's kind of my minimum standard. But I do carry 380s, as I mentioned previously. I carry the LCP Max when I want a pocket pistol. Would I carry it? I would, and here's why. Because modern 380 ammunition is up to par. It is quite lethal. The trade-off being extremely fast follow-up shots. And if you're somebody that is recoil sensitive and you want to practice with your gun, now 380 ammunition, I don't know what it costs as compared to 9mm. I would imagine it's roughly the same cost per box.
It's a little bit more, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, that's right. It is a little bit more expensive. But when you practice with it, you're not going to develop bad habits because the gun literally has minimal recoil. I would think that a novice shooter or somebody who shoots very little is going to have better luck hitting the bullseye with the 380 version of the P365, simply because in their training, they're going to be less inclined to flinch. Because even though you and I don't think the regular 9mm gun recoils all that much, you hand it to a new shooter, I have, and they go, boom, they fire that first shot, and that little tiny polymer frame 9mm jumps in their hands. They're like, whoa,
right?
It startles them. They're not going to have that response with a 380.
Right.
They're going to be apprehensive on that first shot. It's going to be pop. And they go, oh, this is cool. And then pop, 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 pop.
See,
and you're going to have to pry the gun out of their hands because they're having so much fun with it. So I do think it serves a purpose, right? I do. And I would carry one just for fun. You know, I'm really intrigued by the fact that they've included the ability to put a red dot sight on here, and I am going to put a red dot sight on this, and we'll revisit the gun.
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe we'll have another discussion about 380 guns in the future in a similar format that we're having our discussion here today. And we'll bring up, you know, how well does this thing carry? How does it stack up to a P365 and 9mm with a red dot sight? You know, can I shoot it faster? Can I get faster, more accurate shots? I think that's all stuff that's good conversational pieces for future videos.
I know when we were shooting this thing, we were actually having quite the blast with the thing. What did we do? Like 450, 500 rounds?
Yeah, we burned through most of the case.
I mean, we were just constantly shooting it. It was that much fun to shoot. And I'm being very serious. Like, this gun was really fun to shoot.
And so let me just reiterate, guys. After we got past those first two magazines, we had no malfunctions. The gun ran flawlessly. The more we shot it, definitely the more reliable it became.
Yep.
One couple of things I did notice about the gun, I tried to do my, infamous, famous, whatever you want to call it, limp wrist test, where I just barely hold the gun with two fingers and fire it, and that's to simulate somebody with a very loose grip. Once the gun had gotten through several hundred rounds, I did my limp wrist test, and the gun functioned 100%. It just didn't lock open. In my one-handed drills, when I was shooting one-handed, it cycled just fine, but it failed to lock open.
Right.
And that wasn't a function of my thumb hitting the slide stop, riding that. That isn't what happened. My thumb was nowhere near it. My thumb doesn't ride anywhere near that when I'm firing, especially one-handed. I think it just needs a really firm grip and a lot of resistance for it to be the most reliable. And I think it'll be the most reliable as well with a nice, warm self-defense load in it.
Oh, yeah.
So the gun, off to a rocky start. I was kind of worried about it. Ended up at the end of the day, you and I were smiling, laughing, having a good time, and we're madly in love with the gun and looking forward to shooting it again.
Yep, and I'm looking forward to an XL version of it.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's format for today's video. I think you guys, if you're interested in, what do these things retail for, Jay? It retails right around the same price as the 9mm?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very similar to it. We'll have to put it up on the screen there.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at it. We grabbed this from Copper. We want to thank Copper for supplying the gun for our video and our testing purposes. But if you'd like to comment on the format of this video, please do that down below. Let us know what you think of this format and also what you think of the 380 and a P365. Do you guys think that it makes any sense? All right, guys, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, please consider becoming part of our Patreon family. There is a link in the video description below. Follow that link, and you can join up with our Patreon family. Also, right here on YouTube, you got that little join button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash that join button, and you can support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. And last but not least, guys, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Thank you for 14 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.